Josh Appleman, founder and CEO of Appleman Properties. Today we're joined with Clive Davis. Clive has went from corporate to the real estate entrepreneur. Clive, if you could let everyone know a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. Thanks for having me. Yeah, so background, I started out as a corporate transactional lawyer with a Wall Street firm, New York City, right out of law school. So I did that for several years, transitioned into the pharmaceutical industry and became in-house counsel for a pharma company there in New York, and then relocated to Atlanta, and a couple years thereafter became a chief compliance officer for a different pharmaceutical company. So all in all, a 20-year corporate run. And at the end of 2016 is when I made the decision to exit and make my escape from corporate life and pursue real estate investment full time. And so that's the journey and path that I've been on since. I did invest in real estate throughout those 20 years as a small landlord, mostly with properties out of state, but nothing on the scale of what I would embark on after leaving corporate at the end of 16.
Got it. That's incredible. So you realize the value of real estate, getting in and taking action and getting things going. So tell us about your first deal, how you found it, how you financed it, took it down, and managed it, and just the entire experience.
Yeah, I'll talk about the bigger stuff.
Yeah.
So the first deal, once I decided I was going to pursue this, I submitted my first offer on a 92 unit in spring of 2019. I didn't get that one, and I thought, I didn't get that one. We didn't want to pay $300,000 more. Someone else did. They got it. I figured I'd get a deal in a month or two. Fast forward to summer of 21 was when I landed my first deal. So this is a publicly marketed deal, 244 units here in Atlanta, which is home for me. And we ended up closing on that in late 2021. 244 units we acquired for just under 30 million, and we raised about 8.25 million in equity. So that was my first
Nice.
deal, which took me from 5 units, which was as big as I had gone as kind of a small landlord, all the way to that 244 unit for the first deal.
So how does that happen? How do you go from 5 units to 200 plus? Tell us the part that we're missing.
Yeah, so there's a lot that's missing, including a 2 year journey of knocking on doors. But basically, when I sold that 5 unit I actually sold that 2 weeks into COVID. So I sold that at March 31st of 2020. And I just decided I wasn't going to do anything small. I wanted to get into big stuff. And so what I had started doing even before that was invest in my retirement related funds through a self-directed IRA into 100% commercial real estate deals, mostly multifamily, large scale multifamily deals, as a passive investor. So that was part of my journey. And beyond kind of the expected ROI, I was also trying to get some insight into how do these deals get put together? What do the business plans look like? What's the capital stack look like? What's investor relations all about? And so, always with a view to what kind of a sponsor of these deals am I going to be, whether that's a year from now, 2 years from now, whatever the case was at the time. So, that was part of my education. Another part was just getting out there and putting myself in a position where I was surrounded by people who had an interest in large scale multifamily real estate as an investment form. So attending multifamily conferences, listening to podcasts like yours and others, just getting out there and really jump starting my education and really I jokingly refer to it as a self-directed real estate MBA because all of
Yeah.
those things coming together was what served as a foundation for me to get into this space. And then the last piece is I joined a mentoring program, an apartment investing mentoring program that put me in proximity with people who were all in on multifamily. That was the place where I found my partners. And to some extent, that's where I found some of my passive investors in the deals that I'd go on to do. So again, even when I had all that in place, I was still knocking on the door for the better part of 2 years before I landed that first deal. And during that time, I'm developing relationships in my market, or my target market, which is the Atlanta Metro. Again, that's home for me. Developing relationships with brokers, touring properties, positioning myself for that first deal.
Yeah, that's huge. And then once you get into the room with other like-minded people in a mastermind, it gives you the confidence to be able to go out there and take a 200 plus unit property and put it on contract, and the confidence to raise the capital. There's components to learning. You have to learn the language, understand how to underwrite, and understand the deal if it is even a deal. And then there's a whole nother component is conveying that deal to investors that could potentially want to invest, and that takes years of training as well. So it's sounds like you had to fast track by just getting in the right room around the right people.
Well, you learn very quickly that when you're doing deals at this scale, it's a team sport. So even folks that have the wherewithal to do it by themselves would be crazy to try and do it by themselves. And so very quickly you realize it's a team sport, and you just got to figure out, do I build a team from scratch, or do I associate myself with a team that's already, has a track record, is already doing deals that I can add value to? And so once that light switch goes off, you kind of pivot from the mindset of, I can only do deals based upon what's in my personal savings or bank account.
Yeah. Yeah, and that holds you back. It's ultimately you have to keep your cup filled in order to do another deal. And in real estate, the cup is always wanting to empty out on new deals. So it helps
Absolutely.
bringing partners in, bringing investors, and everyone wins together, and taking down more great deals together. So you got your first deal done, and then ultimately that gave you the catapult to do a second deal. Is that correct?
It did, and so you've heard of the law of the first deal, right?
Oh
So
yeah.
I told you about knocking on the door for 2 years. We got that first deal. We closed early November of 2021. The week that we closed on that, I got a call from Cushman saying, "Congratulations, Clive! You've been awarded a deal. Happened to be about 4 to 5 miles away from that first deal, 200 units, a $40 million deal." And so we ended up closing that 3 months after. So all of that work and effort that I had been putting in for 2 years was finally starting to pay off, and I was finally starting to gain some traction. And once you've got one deal under your belt, you are now a proven commodity in that space. And so people are going to look at you with a lot more seriousness than when you're a wannabe owner of large scale multifamily. Once you can say that, no, I'm a current owner and I've successfully closed on a transaction of comparable size. Now you start getting taken seriously, and it's a different conversation than I was having for those 2 years when I was just saying I want to be
Yeah.
versus I am.
Yeah, absolutely. That just gets everything going. So what's next on the roadmap as far as projects, and then of course we're dealing with the market and today's craziness. What's next?
Yeah, well, we're all bobbing and weaving and navigating the market reality that is today. We're all paying attention to what's happening with interest rates and rate cap pricing and all that good stuff. We happen to just close a deal at the end of June 30th. We closed on, it's actually the largest transaction I've been involved with. We acquired a 295 unit in Arkansas, Northwest Arkansas, for 77 million, raised 38 million in equity for that deal. So to pull that deal off in this environment with all of the noise that's out there, I'm super proud of that. I was one of many involved in that transaction. So we're fresh off of that one, but what's new for me, or what's happening for me, is I've gotten into a couple of development projects. And I always knew that it was a natural evolution to get to development at some point. It probably found me sooner than I planned for it, but it's all good. I'm involved with two developments. One really heavily involved with one other partner, and that's a 90-acre development southwest of the Atlanta airport. It's a mixed-use community, culinary-centric community that we're developing. And within the next 2 weeks, we should have our land disturbance permit fully approved and be looking at breaking ground in probably late October, early November. So that's exciting. That's consuming a lot of my time. I'm drinking from the fire hose in terms of what I'm learning, because development, as you know, Josh, is a very different animal
Yeah.
than going out and buying an existing asset that's already up and operational.
Yeah, developing is it's a grueling process. It's there's no satisfaction until it's actually done, and that could take years. But after it's done, it's great. It's just going through the motions. It's yeah, you're ups and downs. Get approvals, get the yeah, it's architectural engineering, the whole nine yards. How do you get involved with a deal that size? How does that come about?
Yeah, so like I said, it kind of found me, but I would say it came as a result of networking. And I tell people that I kind of boo-hooed networking when I was in corporate life for the 20 years. I didn't necessarily see it as being critical to my day-to-day success. When you get into the space of real estate, commercial real estate, you realize that without networking and developing relationships, you're dead in the water. So as a result of networking, a mutual friend of mine and my now partner on this 90-acre development said, "Hey, Clive, you should meet Dominique. She has this vision for this culinary-centric community. She's the former, she started the Atlanta Food and Wine Festival, and this is her latest venture." And then said to her, "Hey, Dominique, you should meet Clive. He's this multifamily guy, has this interesting background, et cetera, et cetera." So we meet, we hit it off. We meet a few times. I and my spouse, my wife, meet up with her and her husband. Again, we cement the relationship, and just ultimately that grew to the point where we both agreed it would be a great idea for us to develop this project together and bring our respective skills to the deal, to the opportunity. So that's how that came about. And like I said, it came as a result of networking and a
Yeah,
mutual friend just connecting us.
just being in the right rooms. That's what it's about in
Yeah, you
real
got to put
estate.
yourself out there.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. What areas, you said Arkansas, what other areas are you all underwriting for?
Yeah, so if it's a deal that I'm taking the lead on, I'm primarily focused on the Atlanta Metro as my target market. Um, I'm not actively looking outside of this market. The only reason I looked at that deal is because one of my partners on my earlier deals has ties and connections to that market, and had been trying to get into that market since 2019, and finally was successful in landing a real quality asset, compelling submarket. And I was one of the folks he reached out to and said, "Hey, do you want to join me in getting this deal done?" And so, again, if it's a partner with whom I have a solid relationship, I'll take a look. But I'm not out there beating the bushes in these markets, where I haven't kind of put in the due diligence, put in the time, developing relationships, and all the things you need to do if you're trying to break into a market.
Yeah, I think that's a big takeaway is he reached out to you because he knew you could bring value to the deal in whatever capacity that may be, whether it's raising capital, asset management, boots on the ground, just a part of the general partnership to add value to make sure that the deal is the plan gets executed. How would you suggest someone out there that may be listening get involved with real estate and find out how they can add value?
Yeah, so I mean, everyone's got to do a self inventory of kind of what do I bring to the table? What value can I potentially add? And the beauty of commercial real estate at this scale is that there are so many roles, so many hats that can be worn. And so, you may have a strong network that you can tap into. You may be kind of an outgoing, extroverted person who could take the lead on investor relations. You may be the boots on the ground if you're in a market that's a desirable market that others are trying to get into. You got to figure out what is your advantage. So early in my journey, I basically said, I'm not trying to compete in, Dallas Fort Worth, great market for multifamily, but I don't necessarily bring anything of value to that market. It's heavily competitive. I'm not boots on the ground. I don't want to be boots on the ground. I don't want to be flying into Dallas to babysit deals. And so I said, I'm going to compete here in my backyard, strong multifamily market. I can then position myself with people that I'm meeting and networking with. I can then position myself as boots on the ground with developed and established relationships. And, once we get the deal closed, I'm going to be naturally the person who's going to take the lead on asset management and the relationship with our third party property manager, all of those things that need to be done, from an asset management standpoint to ensure our business plan is getting executed. So just selfishly, I've chosen to focus primarily on my market here in Atlanta. And again, if it makes sense outside and someone that I know and trust and want to work with and partner with, I'll take a look at those opportunities. But I'm not out there beating the bushes for them.
Yeah, no, I agree. And where focus goes, energy flows, and if it's your hometown, then you can dominate your territory just by knowing the area, and even knowing what's up and coming in the area, just better
Yeah.
than anyone else. Just being in the know. That's smart. And you live in a great submarket. I mean, the MSA is huge, or not submarket, the MSA in general,
Yeah,
Atlanta. So
it
there's
is. I mean,
really
when
nice.
I moved to Atlanta in 2005, the metro had a population of 4.8 million. Today, I think it's 6.2 or 6.3 million, and continuing to grow. And that only accelerated with COVID's arrival and onset. And not only is it a strong market, in the last year or two, it's been a strong market for more than a decade. And so, I think it's going to continue to benefit from corporate relocations. We continue to get our fair share of corporate giants to add to the roster of the UPSs, the Home Depots, the Mercedes Benz of North America, the Porsche of North, all of these companies that are household names.
Yeah.
We continue, Microsoft has a substantial presence that it's growing here. So I think all of that bodes well for the metro on a go forward basis.
Yeah, for sure. If you had to start over, what would be your route? What would you do?
Uh, the only thing I would do differently that comes to mind is just start a lot sooner. I tell myself now that, Clive, you didn't need to work in corporate America for 20 years before making this pivot and transition. And even while I was working, there's more that I could have been doing to make for a smoother transition out of corporate into this. And so it's really comes down to timing and some of the smaller things that I was doing. I would have made more of a concerted effort to figure out the pathway to larger scale deals sooner. But outside of timing, there's not really a lot that I would change in terms of what I was actually doing.
Yeah, that's good. If somebody's listening, they want to get started in real estate and they're not sure which direction to take, how would you tell them to educate themselves and a path they should take to get to where you're at?
Yeah, so I'm a big proponent of mentorship of whatever kind. Mentorship, from my standpoint, when you decide that you're going to be mentored and someone's going to mentor you, it should compress timelines. So if it would take you, let's say, 3 years to figure it out, kind of trial and error on your own, kind of knocking around, you get with a mentor, it should compress those 36 months to 12 months. So I'm a big proponent of get with someone or get around people who have done what you're trying to do and have them share their experience, impart their wisdom, and help you navigate that journey. There's no need to repeat mistakes that others have made. You should be thinking about how can I get to my destination in the shortest amount of time. And from what I know, the best way to do that is to get with someone who can hold your hand and guide you and get you there with the fewest number of kind of detours and diversions.
Yeah, yeah, that's huge. What about books? Have you could you suggest some books for the listeners to read?
Yeah, I so there's one that doesn't go too far from me, and I'm going to shamelessly plug it. The Best Ever Apartment Syndication
Yeah,
book. I've probably recommended this 3 dozen times. By Joe Phillips and Theo Hicks. Great book, kind of gives you the A to Z's of how you do these deals, what you need to do, and so I highly recommend that. And my copy, I've kind of listened to the accompanying podcast that goes with it, but I also terrorize the book too. Um, but that's one I would recommend if you're serious about wanting to get into the space and viewing and syndication as the way to do it. That's a solid book.
would you say it's worth the effort to go through all the motions of learning and the mentorship? And I mean, it takes years to get to where you're at. Years of knowledge. Is it worth it?
Absolutely. I mean, everyone, you've got to determine what's your why.
Yeah,
If you set out on your journey and and you're kind of you don't know what your destination is, you're going to run out of gas eventually.
yeah,
So you got to start with where am I trying to go, and once you determine where you're trying to go, and for me, it was all centered around kind of personal freedom and being able to create generational wealth and a legacy for my family. Something, give my family and those coming after me generationally more than I inherited. And I think that's all of our responsibility. So for me, um, although I was in a very good situation, well compensated as a corporate executive, I tell people that I don't care how high your W-2 income is, you cannot pass on a high W-2 income to your heirs. It just doesn't work like that. As soon as you stop showing up for work, or as soon as they no longer have a use for you, that income stream stops dead in its tracks. And so for me, I wanted to reclaim my personal freedom. I didn't want anyone to be able to tell me when I could go, where I could go, and when I needed to be back. I just wanted to reclaim that personal freedom, and I'm using that personal freedom to create that generational wealth and legacy for my family.
yeah. That's huge. That's huge. And having the onset to know what you're going after and reaching goals. That's huge. If somebody wants to get a hold of you, how can they reach out to you?
Yeah, I'm pretty active on social media, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. But the best way for anyone to reach out and get a hold of me is just going directly to my website, which is parkroyalcapital.com. And you can book a call with me. You can connect with me on the various social media platforms, and as well as sign up for my newsletter.
Very cool. Awesome. I look forward to following you. Appreciate the conversation. We will certainly talk soon. Clive, I appreciate it.
Continued success, Josh.
Yes,
Thanks for
sir.
having me
Absolutely.
on.
High five. Thank you.